Good evening. Hello. How are you guys doing? It's been a while. It's a lovely Wednesday evening. I'm glad you guys could make it. All jokes aside, we were supposed to do Casual Friday today. I was here on the computer, ready to go in the morning at the agreed upon time, and Cred rugged me, and then he was like, "I'm so sorry. We can do tonight." And I was here in front of the computer, and he rugged me. So now you have to deal with me alone, because I'm just catching up on the Wednesday that we skipped basically. And I think Casual Fridays might come tomorrow or the day after. We'll see. Hi, Casual Don. Yeah, it's a little bit lame, huh? Why does he keep rugging? Because he has a lot of real life obligations, which I don't have. That is why. Or because he hates all of you. Either or, I'm not entirely sure. Sound is soft, is it? It's as loud as it's ever gonna be. You're just gonna have to make it loud on your end. Sorry, bro. Hey Dawn, hope the wife feels better. Thanks for being here. She's okay. She's a little bit upset that I'm not currently in bed. But I was like, I skipped Wednesday and now we skipped Casual Friday, so I'm just gonna hop on real quick, especially given a lot has happened that we can talk about. I'm not gonna make it too long, so I'm gonna keep the intro short. Always babble and babble, but yeah. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Also, big shout out to Woo for sponsoring the show. Also appreciate their support. And yeah, let's get into it. High time frame monthly still looks the same. Nothing worrisome there. The worries on Bitcoin. Everything looks like shit besides Bitcoin. And Bitcoin honestly looks really good. It's just people are really, really upset that their backs are going down, and that's kind of making them bearish in Bitcoin. But Bitcoin still looks excellent, and you'll see when we go through the charts, unless you start looking at the low time frames, right? But the monthly looks excellent. The weekly is in a range, and it's quite the bullish range, depending on how we close this week, right? So this is the midpoint of the range. We've tested it as resistance, got rejected, reclaimed it, retested the range high, and closed at the support, right? So depending on whether we close above or below the support here makes a big difference, to me at least. Especially given how we got here, right? So basically you had all the tariff talks from Trump. It's basically the only real reason why Bitcoin is down. There's a lot of reasons why altcoins are down, but that's the only reason Bitcoin is down. Trump's kind of trying really hard to nuke it by going on, like, talking about tariffs every Friday, and then traditional markets close, but crypto can get butt fucked. not the best, but that's kind of where we are right now. Trump's just kind of fucking with us. It's a little bit annoying because it kind of makes good setups worse and makes hit rate like really hard to, like, your hit rate for these kind of setups just not really accurate, right? But anyway, he can do that on the low time frames, but doesn't really change the high time frame picture too much. That's why the weekly is quite nice. And to me, like I said, I would like to see a green weekly close. It's not really, it wouldn't be too difficult. It's only $1,000, like, to the upside, like 1%. It's not that big a deal. The only problem is that Trump kind of like threw another, like, okay, we're gonna talk about tariffs next week, in the mix, or just earlier. So we'll see if it can actually hold up in the face of that. If so, I think that's quite bullish for Bitcoin. I think that would probably lead to, like, a breakout attempt. If we cannot, we're going back to range low, right? So if we close like at 95 or whatever, would be a sign of weakness. And then I think there's a good chance we go back to 90. That's been tested a bunch, so maybe we go even and wash out below 90 towards the 80s, right? But just generally looking at this, it's not the end of the world. Like, that's a good chart. Would still be a good chart if it broke down lower, came back up. But yeah, just generally, it's a little bit sad because we had a really, really good setup before Trump started talking about tariffs for this breakout. But yeah, gonna be an interesting one. The only real weakness that you'll find, like the extraordinary weakness, because I mean, let's be real, like look, zoom out, and this doesn't look that bad, right? It's literally just people are bearish because of altcoins. And the only real weakness that you can find right now on the Bitcoin chart is on the daily. We're getting rejected by this resistance here. So attempted to break out, got tariff talks, nuked, bounced strongly into resistance, got rejected by that resistance, which was like really unsurprising. And now we've been kind of like getting rejected by that area, right? So this area is resistance. Above there starts looking really good. I think like above 101, 102 looks really, really good on Bitcoin. Down here, it's kind of like a mixed bag because for one, this is still like high time frame wise, it's still decent. Problem is that, I mean, these tests have been, like we've tested the range low quite a bit. So that's why I'm talking, like when I'm talking about the weekly time frame, I was like, could go in the 80s if we lose weekly support. If we do lose weekly support, I mean, these supports look weak as well. But for now, not that bad. It's just a daily, it's not that great. Don going full TDS? No. I mean, this is not me, like this is me objectively just talking about this. Like, this is not, like people are kind of like confusing personal feelings with like just market commentary. This is just market commentary. I don't like Trump, yes, but this has nothing to do with it. Like if Trump is like, hey, I'm going to get into a trade war with the entire world, obviously that's going to lead to like just generally markets being shit. And that's what's happened, essentially. So that's not Trump derangement syndrome or whatever you call it. That's just being objective. Now, whether that's good for America or not is a different story. Just market-wise, obviously not going to be good. Sol looks sad. Yeah, a lot of coins look sad. Is there any reason to not sell my ETH and Sol into Bitcoin? I mean, I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know. Altcoins are quite low right now, but they can go much lower, obviously. I mean, I've always said, like, hey, expect these things to go to zero. The only thing that's not going to go to zero is Bitcoin. No exceptions. So the question is, do you think they're going to bounce again, have like a proper bull market? But at the end of the day, like for me, altcoins always going to be something like this. Do whatever and then go to zero. Like that's the end result for all of them. To me. But that doesn't mean like they rally, they nuke, and then you're like, oh, it's going to go to zero eventually. So that's the end result, right? So I'm going to sell here. And then it's going to do this and then this, and you're going to be upset. I mean, and that's really hard to predict. But yeah. So on the daily time frame, approaching support, we've pierced these ones before. But still, like that's decent support in here. I don't necessarily would want that to see, like I wouldn't want to see this broken. If this breaks at 94, 95, we go back to the range low, and then, like I said, it's been tested a bunch. Don, who's the greater fool after Sailor? I mean, it's not necessarily Sailor that's buying. It's like a bunch of people giving him the power to buy. So the greater fool is always the normie. So if sidelined from higher by green with close or below the range, I think like generally like if you're looking for an entry and you don't want to go through this shit, you want to see at least the weekly close above where it opened, and then on the daily time frame for a little bit of confluence, you would like to be above 101. I think like that's the strength setup, because anything else would just basically be like the dip buying setup, and that's fine, right? Like if you bought this dip, like Chad, but like that's cool. But the strength setup would be that one, yeah. So basically, and this is how I do it. So if I'm bearish and I sold higher, right? This would be my invalidation. Basically, that's where I would want to get back in the market. More so than it would be like okay, I'm trading the breakout here. But obviously, it isn't guaranteed. But it's high likelihood, I think, at that point that we're gonna go up, especially given how like everything is just completely insane right now. But yeah, that's Bitcoin. High time frames still look good. Monthly looks excellent. Weekly can close excellent. If it doesn't, maybe you have another week or two of downside, maybe even more. Like that would be like an intermediate kind of downswing that would start developing there, I think. So the weekend is quite important. And then on the daily time frame, still struggling with 99k resistance. Would want to go above there. I think as long as we're trading below here, it's technically on a low time frame, it's technically bearish. This is what has to be reclaimed to flip back bullish. Do you think it's wise personally to always hold one Bitcoin? If you're a believer, yes. If you're not, no. I mean, if you think Bitcoin's going to change the world and whatever, and like it always comes, it depends basically. So let's say you are a strong believer that Bitcoin's going to change the world, right? But you're bearish, so you're like, okay, I'm going to sell everything. What happens when the market goes up? You're probably going to FOMO buy back in, even if it's a bad setup, right? So for those instances, if you're a strong believer, I like to tell people to have insurance basically. Like if you're a strong believer, you want to have some of it. Even if you're bearish on the market, you don't sell everything. You sell like parts or most of it, but not everything. So if you're a strong believer, having one Bitcoin at all times, probably a good idea. If you're not a strong believer, the opposite happens, right? Like you sold a bunch and now it's going low and you're like, fuck, I should have sold everything, shouldn't have kept that one Bitcoin around. And then you will sell the lows. So basically depends on your headspace, depends on like whether you're a believer in the space or not, in Bitcoin or not, like all of that shit. And there's no real normal, like it always depends on the person. There's no advice that you can, that always fits every single person, in my opinion. Well, yeah, it's Trump's fault. I mean, it's clearly Trump's fault. Like, what are you guys on about? Like, how does this make any sense? Like even trad markets nuked. Like, if Trump starts throwing nukes at other countries and the market nukes, are you going to be like, oh, it's not Trump's fault? I mean, obviously, now whether this is like good or bad for America, this is a completely different story. But like, this down move is entirely Trump based, and anyone telling you otherwise is completely delusional. Like I said, end result, completely ignoring the end result, like ignoring whether tariffs are good for the world or not, or good for America or not. It's not the discussion at hand. Like the president of the United States is fucking over trade with everyone. It's gonna have an impact. Anyway, that's Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin. The more kind of like pressing matter for everyone is that altcoins just basically went to zero during this move, which is kind of insane, right? Because Bitcoin realistically is barely down. Like it's down 12% from all-time high. Look, Bitcoin was down 33% during the last pullback from the all-time high, and altcoins were doing much, much better. So like finally, like what we've been talking about has happened, which is altcoin delusion, like delusion and dilution. Basically, there were too many altcoins, and it was impossible to keep the market higher for all of them, just impossible. And then the more unlocks and the more coins you got, like the more liquidity just dispersed, and everything was just kind of like getting fucked. And that's kind of what's happened in the altcoin world. Everything is kind of wrecked. We can look at Bitcoin dominance, even though I hate that, but that's Bitcoin dominance. Oh, wow, pretty close. Don't know if that's gonna play out. I drew this like a long time ago. Anyway, we had a little bit of a dip, and people were like old season, and then a strong recovery, and now like altcoins are just completely wrecked. Bitcoin is dominating the space completely by itself, basically. You're seeing it in ETH. ETH's doing poorly on ETH BTC. Like we had a massive candle to the downside. XRP, I mean, you can barely see it, but still quite bad. And then you go to other coins. Dogecoin almost retraced the entire gains against Bitcoin. Solana retraced the entire Trump candle against Bitcoin. Litecoin doing quite okay, actually, in comparison to a lot of other things. But like you go pretty much anywhere, especially in the meme coin space. Like if you look at WIF against Bitcoin, this is WIF against Bitcoin. That's down from the high 90%. You have all of these coins basically, like everything. Like I mean, against USD, WIF's down like basically also 90%. Popcat, all of those are dead. And that's what happens when you just make too many coins. Like, I mean, there's a reason why I said like, yeah, I mean, this just doesn't end well. So, yeah, I mean, there's not really that much to say about those. Like the memes, especially. I mean, this is very, very unsurprising. Anyone that got surprised by this doesn't really understand how markets work. Like you cannot make infinite of something and then expect all of it to be valuable. Like we have the biggest inflation anywhere in the altcoin space, right? By just making new coins. So that's unsurprising. Surprising, like a little bit more surprising, is that even the bigger coins took quite a hit on this. ETH took a large hit, went down like in one candle by 25%, bounced a bunch, but is now kind of like a little bit in danger of losing this this ascending triangle, which is not great. So I would really like to see a strong weekly close. If we get a good weekly close on Bitcoin and this candle basically goes back to its origin, I think that's fine. But like it looks right now, TA wise, this is like starting to look a little bit cooked, which would not be great. Someone asked, when would you cut your ETH? I'm down with just like holding this. I'm like, even if this breaks down and goes towards like 1.5 or whatever, I'm down to hold it. But TA wise, like this is not great. Like a loss of the prior range, right, would be more than enough usually to just indicate that the bullish setup didn't play out. So basically you have a range, go like this, you lose it, you come back, that's bullish, right? That's what you want to see. And then it ran all the way to range high, got rejected, went back to range low, and then lost it again. Like that's not great. This is not what you want to see. Because the whole setup is basically like this was a deviation below the range. And if you do it again, the credibility of that deviation just kind of disappears. So yeah, not great on ETH/USD. Same with ETH BTC. It's kind of funny, like how everyone made fun of ETH for underperforming, and I mean for good reason, right? But at the end of the day, when everything went to shit, like the other coins just went to zero. So like ETH's down a bunch, everything else is basically at zero. So I mean, no one gets to laugh, right? ETH didn't get to have a bull market, at least not yet. And the other altcoins had a bull market, but full retraced everything. So yeah, it's quite brutal out here. Trend in normal, not log. Nah, I like log better. Why is Litecoin outperforming other altcoins? Because it's getting an ETF. I actually really like the Litecoin setup, but I'm currently like don't really want to put more money back into crypto. Like I took a lot of profits, and I'm not really like, I don't like putting profits back into crypto. So I would have to have something else pump, and then kind of rotate into Litecoin. Instead of like just putting money back in. But I'm tempted. I like the Litecoin setup. Don't you think Wintermute manipulating future perps is one of the drivers of this dump? No. Like even if they had a hand in it, the market needs to be weak for that shit to work. Like people are always like, oh yeah, there's someone manipulating this shit. It's like, dude, you cannot throw someone down a cliff if they're not standing at the edge of the fucking cliff in the first place, right? Like this was the altcoin space, right? This dude here looking down the cliff, and then I mean maybe some smart people just came and were like, oh, I can make money of killing this dude, but it's not like if this guy was if it was like this, you can shove as much as you want from the back and nothing happens, right? And people are always like eager to look at, oh yeah, that guy manipulated the market. It's not how it works. You cannot kill a market if it's like by like short selling or whatever, if the market isn't already at the edge of dying in the first place. I don't know if that analogy makes any sense, but to me it does. So yeah, ETH, I would like to see it close green. Doesn't really feel too likely with, like I said, Trump's comments, like the tariff. I think it would have actually been possible before, and I mean it's still possible, but it's not necessarily the most likely. But I would like to see it at least close above 2.75, which would basically be this area. Like TA wise, that'd be nice. Would hold the triangle, would hold support. And then it has to get back above 2.9 to actually start looking decent, right? And for like a trade setup, I think basically last time we talked about this, with like last week with Cred, I was like, you need to go back above 3.6 and you can just breakout trade this thing to the upside. And I think that's kind of been lowered. And I think if we get anywhere close to 3.2, and this is where I might actually add leverage to the trade. And if it goes back above 3.2, leverage it into the breakout. Until then, it's technically like not a good setup on the long side. ETH obviously giga trash. It did hit monthly support, the lowest one I have. I don't really have any other supports. I like this one better. We broke it to the downside. Not great. This looks kind of shit. But it does, like this is the capitulate. You guys remember when I was like, maybe we just kind of need to capitulate on ETH BTC? This is the kind of candles you're looking for, right? Like the big new candles. So maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't want to make too grand promises. Like ETH's just not been it. XRP, that was actually setting up quite nicely. Might still into the weekly close, but depends. If this closes green, I'm giga bullish. Same as like on ETH, but ETH's a little bit worse. So basically, like if this candle closes green, it's respecting the support. If it doesn't, and if we're trading where we are right now into the close, there's a good chance that we're kind of just ranging in between like 2.1 and 2.6, right? So that'd be the first time this isn't just an up only market on XRP. XRP BTC, same story, right? Like a little bit higher would be nice for like an incredibly bullish setup. But yeah, it depends on how it closes. And like I said, Trump's been Trump's ending remarks on the week don't really help it. Are you still hopeful on ETH XRP, or are we done for? I mean, I'm holding it. If I wasn't hopeful, I would not be holding it. Now, it's obviously easy to say, like for XRP, like I'm holding it since 0.6. So like I'm still up, even though it's down a bunch. I'm still up like 300% almost. With ETH, I'm actually down a little, but also not terrible. Like down like 10% or something, 15% maybe. Like I'm fine with those. But like, so I come from a privileged point, but yeah. I mean, it depends really on the macro situation now. I've been saying that we're late into the cycle, and I think if we get a trade war, like an actual trade war, could just end the cycle, and then we could just be like, it's just the top, and we just go down. If that doesn't happen, I think we are actually gonna have another move to the upside, but like that's kind of it. And I don't make those rules, right? Like it's the US government that kind of decides whether they wanna change the world order, and obviously that's gonna have a large impact, right? Like just generally, like we've gone from basically a very, very connected world, and now everyone's kind of turning more and more isolationist, and America just basically went from being very open to now starting to look very closed, and that's going to have a big impact, right? And that's something that I'm not an expert in, so I don't know whether Trump is going to go through with it or not. Have you ever lived the top with the sentiment? No, never seen the market top like this. But like people are always, and this is something that I see a lot of people kind of like just fuck up, is they're like, we didn't top like this last time, so we cannot top like this time. And the same with bottoms, right? Like people were telling me like, hey, like when Bitcoin was at 16K, they were like, this cannot be the bottom because the macro situation is shit, right? And I was like, this is the bottom because it just makes so much sense with everything blowing up. I was like, FTX blowing up, leading to only this candle, and then nothing happens afterwards. Like that's such a strong sign that there's just no one left to sell, that we're just going to go up, right? And people are like, this cannot be the bottom because the macro situation has always been better at every single crypto bottom. I'm like, I mean, I just disagree. It's a different bottom, maybe, yes, but it's still a bottom. And with the top doesn't have to be the same way it did happen in 2021 or in 2018 or in any other time. You're not like guaranteed to have the exact same thing play out over and over and over again. Just sometimes, like in crypto especially, like it does happen that things look a little bit similar or like act a little bit similar, but you're never guaranteed. You're like, oh, the top felt so much different last time, so it's not the top. It's a very, very bad look, very, very bad kind of like way to look at things, in my opinion. So it's just not how it works. But then again, I mean, I get it, because you cannot really predict it, right? Like with just like people look at data and then you just still have to make the call yourself. And I knew that this was going to be more complicated to predict this time, so I've just been taking profit along the way. So basically, the higher the market goes, the lower my crypto percentage of my portfolio is. And that's something that I've been maintaining the entire way up. And I could have made more money if I didn't do that. But if this market tops and nukes and then whatever, I'm going to be happy that I did it. If it runs more and then tops, I'm still going to be happy to have done it, just because it's so much easier to sleep at night when it's not your entire net worth in the market. And you're reliant on politicians making good choices, because that's the market we're in right now. Like it's a different market, much bigger than it used to be. Bitcoin feels heavy. Yeah, I mean, everything feels heavy. Everything's kind of trading like shit. Low time frame. So yeah, that's that. Like I said, meme coins just completely getting obliterated. Dogecoin and I think Pepe are the ones that are holding the best on that front. But even that, like Pepe is down like what, like 70% from the high. Dogecoin is down 50. Even though we now have a government, like we have Doge in the government, which is kind of funny. Like that catalyst didn't do shit. So much cope in here. I mean, there's cope everywhere on both sides. And the reason is quite obvious, right? Like, let's say you've been sitting in altcoins this entire cycle. Like, you've been sitting in WIF this entire cycle for more than a year now. And maybe you bought like at 0.3 or 0.2, and then you were up infinite, and now you're back to basically where you started. You're obviously going to be completely losing your shit, and you can go one of two ways, right? You can either be like, hey, this is gonna come back, which I think is quite foolish for meme coins, just generally. Like at the moment the moment the meme coin does poorly, you're at risk of it going to zero. It's just how it is. The only one that I don't think is necessarily gonna go to zero is Dogecoin, just because of its age. And I still think that's probably gonna go to zero. Oh shit, I hear the baby crying. Give me a sec. Okay, back. My wife's gonna take care of it. I'm sitting pretty on my Floyd AI bags. I don't know what shitcoins you all are in. Yeah, I mean, there's a few outliers, obviously. But yeah, basically, like everyone's in pain. You can argue like either, hey, this is gonna come back, or you're gonna be like, this has to go to zero now that I'm zeroed out, right? And I think there's a lot of people that are kind of like feel like the entire market needs to go to zero because they lost all of it. Something that I've seen a lot of bear markets where people lose all their money and then they get incredibly bearish because they're like, if I lost all my money but it goes to zero, I mean, at least like that's fine. I can deal with it. But if I lost all my money and then it goes back up, I'm not fine with it, right? So people are gonna just do weird fucking psychological games. Just be prepared for any of those. When people are in pain or like euphoric or whatever, they act odd. Okay, sorry. How bad was last week's liquidation event? It was one of the worst we've ever had. So quite bad. Hey, yeah, seeing a lot of imagine if Bitcoin goes to 70K, imagine altcoins then. Yeah, I mean, that's the brutal part. They're right though. Like, and this is something that I've been saying since like 100, like since we kind of hit here like 100K, 90, 100K ish, where altcoins started getting in trouble. I was like, if altcoins are struggling here, like if Bitcoin runs really hard, there's a good chance altcoins cannot keep up. And if Bitcoin doesn't run and goes down, you're gonna get like massive nuke. And I mean, it's not necessarily like they're wrong, especially, and the altcoin sector wouldn't be in such a bad spot if it wasn't just for just endless inflation. So I have very little trust on the altcoin front. The only ones that I would trust are the big ones. I think they kind of benefit from this like wipeout because you're gonna see people kind of like go back towards those. But just generally, like altcoins got ahead of themselves. We have millions of them. So if Bitcoin closes weekly below midpoint, we're probably going to 80K. Not necessarily, no. But I think we're gonna go to range low, and then there's a chance that the range low breaks. Yes. So not probably to 80K, but I think there would be a really, really high chance that we go to 90 and at least in the high 80s. Yeah. Bitcoin target if cycle's over. If the cycle's over, I think like if the cycle's over for real, I mean, I think we're gonna get a normal bear market. So this one was 77%. This one was 83%. And one thing that kind of happened over the years is that the bear market has been less and less bad. So I think like 70% from the high, maybe 65. So that'd be like down in the 40s. I think that would be a good bottom-ish. I don't really think the cycle tops in already, but if it was, I think we're gonna get a bear market like that. Will Bitcoin go down to the 70Ks? I mean, I don't think so, but always possible. I think people are completely delusional where they think like, hey, if we're heading into a bear market, it's just gonna be like, oh, we're just gonna retest like whatever 70K, 60K. Like that's not a bear market. Can you comment on your WIF position? Do you have any hope for 1.5 or 2, or that's a lost cause? I mean, I bought it because, I mean, I always think this is going to 0. Like I bought it just because it's funny. I bought it basically, and it's not like I bought a lot, but I bought it because I saw Ansem, like Ansem basically shilled this to everyone, and he aggressively shielded like basically in this range between like $1 and $5 to everyone that like would listen, and then he kind of abandoned the whole thing, and I just found it funny. Like I bought a bunch because I found it funny. Like if it goes up, haha, I can make a joke out of it, and if it goes to 0, I mean the WIF people have been hating on me for saying it's going to 0. That'd be a funny thing too, right? Then I can be like, hey, I lost a little bit of money with you guys, even though I was right. So like that's not like I have high hopes in this in the first place. I was just like, this would be funny. Yeah, it's just a little bit of money throwing away on my part because it would be a funny story. Yo, what the fuck is happening with WIF? I mean, this is the meme coins, dude. It's just how meme coins, like if you have infinite meme coins, like where are they gonna go? Like it's not like they ever had any value to begin with. Like it's the same with Popcat. Popcat's also down like 90%. Like, and obviously, like I don't know why people are surprised. Like that's like they belong to 0. The only reason why they were not at 0 is because people were gambling on it. But the moment people stop gambling on it, which is happening right now, that's kind of what happens. I don't know. I don't know why that's so surprising to people. Hedging, yeah. It's basically like, I mean, I made fun and I showed it with from free to like, I think was free to 170 or something. Made a bunch of money with it. People were really upset at me. And then I made fun of it the entire way down. And then when it was low enough, I was basically like, okay, I'm going to buy some. And then it's a hedge as well. Yeah. Basically, if it goes back up, people will leave me the fuck alone. I'm going to lose much less money than I made shorting it. I remember Salsa Tequila getting wrecked so badly on Bobcat, yeah. He has a knack for buying the tops on altcoins. I don't know how he does it, but it's very impressive. But yeah, basically that's the story of altcoins. Everything is basically like completely rugging. And I think besides the big ones, that can go on for quite a while. Like I think, for example, ETH, like ETH's down a bunch, right? Like look at ETH. ETH's down from all-time high 50%. Dogecoin is down from all-time high by 67%, right? So people are kind of like the further out you go on the risk curve, the closer, like the more down you are. Like I said earlier, Pepe is down like 70%, and that's a less risky meme coin. And then you go to WIF, and that's down 90%. And basically, the further away you get from the main coins, I think the more likely it is that they're just not going to make it. And it can go on for a little bit. Need to get rid of some weight. And if that is kind of how we do it, by just bleeding altcoins while Bitcoin's chilling in the 90s, that would actually be quite bullish for the market as a whole. Obviously not bullish for your bags, but that's just how it is. And just generally, like, these can bounce quite aggressively. And if they do, like, for example, WIF, right? Like, it's trading at 0.6. I could see WIF, like, the way it's capitulating now, like, if it goes towards like 0.5 or whatever, this can be reversed towards like 1 or 1.5 really fast. But it also might just not, right? And then it's still hilariously bearish at that point. And I still think it would go lower. But there's something, like, I've seen a bunch of people like try to be really smart and short things that are down like 90%. And I mean, yeah, they're probably going to zero, but like, there's gonna be some aggressive bounces along the way, most likely. Go to Bitcoin, don't waste time on these stupid altcoins. I mean, I've talked about Bitcoin already. Bitcoin is pretty straightforward. All that really matters is the weekly close this week. And then we'll see what's up. But yeah, that's kind of how I look at the market right now. Meme coins obviously getting completely bashed. I don't think that's necessarily like, I think that might be the spot to trade the bounce, but I don't think you'd necessarily want to be in them for longer than that. I think if you want to bet on anything, you want to bet on decent altcoins, and I know that that's a really tough thing to find, but there's a few altcoins out there that are decent. For example, like, if you're coming from the Sol ecosystem, like, Solana is like the obvious choice, even though that's like struggling as well. Needs to hold this green box, otherwise that's looking quite ugly. So basically going towards like the coins that you like, that makes sense, like, you know, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and then you have like a bunch of protocols that do cool shit. Like, I think those would be the better long-term trades. But the bounce play is probably going to be the biggest on the altcoins the moment they actually do bounce. So if you're really aggressive, might want to look for like big capitulation on the altcoins, on the meme coins. Those are probably going to bounce the hardest, but they're probably also going to just go back to dying. Yo, can you briefly say what happened? Any news? It's literally like the news are Trump is threatening tariffs and has been for a week. Kind of has been the catalyst. Altcoins have already been weak before, so I'm not blaming Trump entirely for it. I think the altcoins were standing at a cliff already, but Trump did give it. He did even more. Like, basically, by launching his meme coin, he sucked all the liquidity away. So basically, there was a guy standing at a cliff, which the guy is the altcoins, with like a parachute on its back. And Trump, by launching his meme coins, took the parachute away and then kicked him down with this new tariff talk. So, but the guy would have probably jumped anyway. And so, yeah, that's what it is. What do you think about Bitcoin in the short time frames? Not much. Like, on the daily time frame, it's just the range. Range low here, range high here. This is the nearest support. That's what you would want to hold on a closing basis, because we've been testing this range low quite a bit. There you go. If you're still in meme coins, pivot to utility coins. I mean, on any bounce, I think that would make a lot of sense. Just hope that you get a bounce. But, I mean, vindicated at long last. I talked about this for so long. And altcoins just basically, like, meme coins didn't do anything. Like, I talked about WIF going to zero for a year, literally. Like, started talking about it here. And then we had the the Bitcoin breaking out and the Robinhood listing of WIF, that was the only time when it went actually higher than when I said it. And then we just had a range here. It died. But yeah, the baby's crying again. I can hear it, so I'm going to take care of her. But thank you for coming by. Much love. Big shout out to Wu. And yeah, we'll see each other soon. Bye-bye.